Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. Our next most important philosopher is Mao Zedong. Mao was a Chinese philosopher, leader, politician in the history of Western philosophy. Period of Mao was 1893 to 1976. If we examine about early life of Mao, Mao was born on November 19, 1893 in a peasant family in the central Chinese province of Hunan. He completed his schooling in 1918 and went to Peking, where he accepted the position of librarian in the Peking University. During his stay at university, he met two professors, Li Ta Chao and Chen Tu Hsiu. They were principal founder of the Communist Party of China. Mao came back to Hunan and taught school before Marxism finally became his faith and revolution his career in 1920. He, along with others, founded the Chinese Communist Party in 1921 and he emerged its major leader. He prepared himself to launch a trade union movement. His success brought him fame and an important place in the party's national level leadership. He served at the two biggest headquarters of Communist Party at Shanghai and Canton from 1923 to 1928 with full devotion and caliber. Mao Zedong's contribution in a Communist Party became a major source of his popularity, and in his native town Hunan he played very important role. In Hunan he emphasized strength of peasants and he discovered the strength of the peasants and organized them into a revolutionary force. In a very short period, he attained popular support from peasants. Mao was appointed as a chief propagandist of the Chinese Communist Party and he played very important role to suppress the Kuomintang force. For this purpose, he became popular as a strong, dynamic leader, and he trained a guerrilla force properly to fight for a different his opponents. He selected mountainous southeast and found some bases, and he expanded forces, guerrilla forces, and proclaimed them as major contributory force for the attainment of his purposes. He proclaimed himself chairman and worked with the Russian trained communists. Comintern troops forced the defenders to quit the Soviet Republic in 1935. Mao strategically led his remaining Red Army across China to northwest, where they settled in a new bases from 1935 to 1936. That was a most historical event, and that was a long march of thousands miles. During this period, he gained full control of the party. He determined his own policies and proclaimed them as guiding principles for the communist government in China. It was most crucial period for Mao and his Red Army to acquire power in China. In 1931, Japan invaded Manchuria and crushed Comintern forces, and Mao adopted a moderate policy during the war that won him much fame and liberal sympathy. After the surrender of Japanese forces in the Second World War, a civil war between the communists and Comintern forces broke out. The communists won the war after a long struggle under the dynamic leadership of Mao Zedong. Chiang Kai-shek was repressed along with his forces, and Mao, after getting the control of the continent, proclaimed China as People's Republic of China in 1949. So, nationalist government of Chiang Kai-shek was accordingly installed, and Mao was pronounced first chief of communist China. He remained on the position through the following decades. He visited Soviet Union to conclude an alliance with Kremlin for the purpose to secure all possible aid for the country's economical development. And when he died in 1976, then he was the head of the state and chairman of the Communist Party of China. After a brief introduction of Mao Zedong, now I explain you Mao's views about the communist revolution. The leadership and initiative in the Chinese Communist Revolution did not come primarily from the intellectual. Not all of China's intellectuals became communist by any means. Different intellectual students, professors played a vital role in the success of communism in China. It is important to note that many of them joined the communist cause, and part of reason was undoubtedly economic and economic and deteriorated conditions of peasants class. Another important point of this discussion is that imperialism and feudal landlordism, imperialism and feudal landlordism were the chief enemies, hunting like the evil monsters and eating up the emerging progress and development in China. There was many examples of oppression and other steps against the different imperialist and landlords, and proletariat class was being victimized ruthlessly. The main task of revolution was to mash foreign imperialist oppressions, imperialist hypocrisy, and a democratic revolution to overthrow feudal landlords' oppression. It is time that the character of the Chinese Revolution at the present stage is not proletarian, socialist, but the bourgeois democratic. This point is very, very important, and I repeat it again that at this stage Chinese Revolution was not considered as a proletarian socialist but bourgeois democratic. The new democratic revolution in China is widely different from the democratic revolutions of Europe and America in that it results not in a dictatorship of the united front of all the revolutionary classes under the leadership of the proletariat. The new democratic revolution is fundamentally in line with the revolution in three people's principles as strongly advocated by Dr. Sun Yat-sen in 1924. In the manifesto of the First National Congress of the Kuomintang issued in the year, Dr. Sun stated, the so-called democratic system, modern states is usually monopolized by the bourgeois and has become simply an instrument for oppressing the common people. On the other hand, the Kuomintang's principles of democracy means a democratic system shared by all the common people and not privately owned by the few. So he further added that enterprises such as banks, railways, airlines, whether Chinese owned or foreign owned, which are either monopolistic in character or too big for private management, shall be operated and administered by the state. So that private capital cannot dominate the livings of peoples. This is the main principle of the regulation of capital. If we examine Mao Zedong's concept of and his views of revolution, then we find out that Mao emphasized for his guerrilla force and a better and strong and disciplined organization of Communist Party. And he also attained a support from workers, peasants, and other sections of petty bourgeois. All occupy a definite position and they play a definite role. A republic of such type can only be realized under the leadership of the proletariat class. The ultimate goal is to bring about the socialist and communist society. Therefore, it is fundamental duty of every communist to play an active part in building up China as one of the prosperous and powerful countries of the world. Now I explain you about Chinese communism. Chinese communism is based on four main ideologies. Number one, Marxism. These include the theory of surplus value, dictatorship of proletariats, theory of class struggle, and dialectical materialism. These principles were seriously studied in China. They found their due place in Mao's philosophy. Number two, Leninism. Lenin modified Marxism according to his own circumstances, according to the demands of his own circumstances. Lenin was of the view that imperialism forms a stage of capitalism. In this struggle against capitalism, the position and importance of colonials and semi-colonials cannot be underestimated. While thinking of the word revolution, opposition to imperialism cannot be avoided. Lenin recognized the role of the agriculturalist in bringing about revolution. He said the communism will pass through bourgeois democracy before coming to developing nations. Next point, Stalinism. Stalinism, which stream of ideology to Chinese communism, came from the philosophy of Stalin. Stalin laid emphasis on respectable behavior with the minorities. And fourth, Maoism. Chinese communism is based on fourth most important ideology of Maoism. Maoism, the most important stream of ideas which came from Mao Zedong. He molded whole ideology and whole philosophy of communism in China, and it began to known as Maoism. Now I explain you some of the main political ideas of Mao Zedong's political philosophy. According to Mao, Marxism philosophy was interpreted to suit Chinese conditions. Communism could not find roots in the country. He was not a blind follower or either Leninism or Stalinism. He was not a blind follower of either Leninism or Stalinism. This point is very, very important regarding the discussion of Mao Zedong. And that point is that he does not blindly follow the communism ideas, philosophy from Lenin and Stalin, but he interpreted he interpreted his philosophy according to China's circumstances. He also interpreted communism in such a way that even communism of Russian type was challenged. He made communism a living philosophy. He exposed that in such a manner that people began to consider him as a great leader. He was considered as the most progressive leader of the world in his period. Most important point of Mao's philosophy was about revolution. Mao explained that armed revolution was as necessary as it was when Marx or Lenin explained it. According to Mao, the working classes were the backbone of all revolutionary activities. This point is also very important. I repeat it again. According to Mao, the working classes were the backbone of all revolutionary activities. Therefore, they should be well trained in guerrilla activities. The revolutionaries should create an atmosphere by which civil wars are encouraged. They should try to dominate after the civil war had broke out. No revolution could be a success unless agriculturists and cultivators were association with that. The leadership will always vest in the hands of the workers. This point is also important. Mao Zedong always emphasized the power of peasants, power of workers, power of lower classes of the society. Next most important point, he always emphasized the importance of peasant class. Karl Marx, Lenin and Stalin had emphasized on working classes, but Mao felt that the peasants should be accepted as the leaders of the revolution. They alone are the real backbone for overthrow of feudal forces. Assessing the importance of peasantry class in China, Mao clearly gave importance about the rights of peasants class, about the betterment and welfare of the peasants class, and he certainly felt that they had their roots in Chinese Revolution. Next point about Mao's philosophy that is very important. Mao is also opposed to capitalism like Marxism, Leninism and Stalinism. Capitalism is definitely criticized in a very clear way by all followers of Marx. The two world wars have given a very serious blow to capitalism. It only needed one strong blow. It is for most duty of communist countries that they should work against capitalism. These countries should ensure that capitalist countries which were regularly engaged in war, so engaged that these could not be find time to suppress anti-capitalist activities at home. These countries should encourage civil wars and guerrilla activities as well. For a successful revolution, Mao laid stress on villages. The villages should be organized to face the workers and peasants who hail from the villages are more organized to face the aggression than the workers usually come from the cities. Mao believed that where the revolutionary forces were still weak, it was necessary to build the backward villages into advanced, consolidated base areas, integrate military, political, economic, and cultural revolutionary bases so that they can fight their enemy who utilize the cities to attack the rural areas. Due to the advancement and concentration of wealth in cities, for some time it might be possible that rural areas do not achieve their object. But ultimately, revolutionary forces operating from the villages are bound to be success. This point is also very important part of Mao Zedong's philosophy that he considered villages as a base for revolution. Next most important part of Mao's philosophy is he supported philosophy of power. According to Mao Zedong, everybody's thinking and approach can be changed by political power. Through political power, even all social institutions can be controlled and managed in the way one liked. Economic conditions alone do not mold human thinking and institutions. Ideas make the society. After ideas, only military strength is most important. Political and military powers are closely associated with each other. He further explained that few political aspects and few political economic aspects and other different aspects of society can be integrated through revolutionary forces, and for us great successful it is necessary to enhance military power. So in Mao Zedong's philosophy, he also highlighted importance of power and power politics. Next important point of his philosophy is that Mao in a very clear way explained that war is very necessary against capitalism. Mao had no considerations, no love for peace. According to him, peace is nothing else but contribution of present system of capitalism. It is war which can bring to end the capitalism and install communism in its place. The outcome of First World War was Russian Revolution, and revolution in China was accomplished as a result of Second World War. According to Mao Zedong, Third World War is bound to end capitalism and in its place sow the seed of communism. Therefore, Mao favored war for the attainment of successfulness of communism and to abolish the capitalism. Next point of Mao's philosophy is about the state. In the philosophy of Mao, state is a means and method for crushing one group by the other. Those who manage to come to power in the state make every effort to crush the opponents. The state should crush those who are working against working classes. This point is also very important. Once the communists manage to come to power, they should use their power to end the capitalist. State should be used as means for crushing the capitalist and anti-communist elements in the state. Mao also believed in personality cult. He believed in the popularity of the personality. He should be considered above everything else. His words should be accepted as law. In China, Mao had created this position for himself. His ideas about the Cultural Revolution are on the lips of every Chinese. Every Chinese considers it his foremost duty to propagate Mao's ideas and not to question them. Due to personality cult, Mao's authority is not being questioned in China in his period. According to Mao, army should be thoroughly politicized. It should be made realize that they are defending a particular cause and they should serve the army and they also have a dominant position and they do not like any challenge to their authority. So we can say that Mao made the concept that army defending a particular cause and they should serve as long as they are capable of defending about their purposes. Next most important aspect of his philosophy was the policy of fight and talk. Mao had initiated the policy of fight and talk. The capitalists are in the dominant position in the world. They do not like any challenge to their authority, any challenge intolerable for them. So, first of all, the capitalists should be engaged in war. This can be an open war or guerrilla warfare method, or it can also be civil war. All that he wanted is that in the war the enemy should be kept fully engaged and exhausted. So the communist states, however, should be very careful that they are not serious in making the talks a success. So overall, Mao Zedong and his policies clearly supported not only all communist groups but also against capitalist policies all over the world. And Mao also supported policy of propagating against the capitalism. Mao spent time on the development of politics after revolution. Mao sported dialectics or dialectical process, and he explains that as a practical solution to the post-revolution politics, Mao gave the concept of new democracy. Mao views, Mao's views about imperialism and feudalism go hand in hand, and he gave importance again and again the people weapons were a decisive factor. People's war was based on the broadest and possible common front of the masses. For power structure in China, Mao wanted to establish four power blocks in the country. Number one, workers, peasants, petty bourgeois, and national bourgeois. He wanted to have a limited front of masses to fight imperialism. He said that the peasants were capable of bringing revolution independently. The revolution should start from the rural areas before it spread out to the cities. And success in revolution must depend on masses and their role. A good leader must come from the masses and struggle for them alone. This leader should take his ideas from masses. The people should be involved in the task of national regeneration and also in all revolutionary process. Revolution should not aim at merely capturing power but using that for the transformation of the society. So, in the light of Mao Zedong's philosophy, we can explain that according to Mao, permanent revolution can come only that has roots in the masses. And he also laid importance on practice rather than knowledge. He felt that maximum knowledge could be obtained with the help of personal participation in activities rather than their mere knowledge. To quote his own words, he explained that if a man wants to know certain things or certain kinds of things directly, it is only through personal participation in the practical struggle to change the reality, to change those things or those kinds of things that he can come in contact with the phenomena of things. So he gave importance practical aspect. He adopted practical approach according to the circumstances of China, according to the agrarian society of China. And he again and again he believed and he emphasized about the importance of significance role of peasant class in the Chinese Revolution. After examining different aspects of Mao's philosophy, I briefly explained you about cultural revolution. Mao launched grand proletariat cultural revolution in China in 1966. Masses of Red Guards were organized to propagate this revolution and made to work against well-established sectors of Chinese society. Cultural revolution was planned because Mao was disturbed by growing deviation from his teachings. He therefore thought of extensive cultural transformation. The main targets of cultural revolution were handful of party persons in authority who were taking capitalist roads. These people stood against masses of workers, peasants, and soldiers. According to Mao, Red Guards were required to completely overthrow them. In the words of most famous writer George Sabine, the Cultural Revolution seems designed to preserve Mao's Chinese Marxist society from being overwhelmed by industrialization and conquest, bureaucratization of life that has characterized the modern West and is increasingly characteristic of Soviet Union as well. So, cultural revolution of Mao also considered a most important contribution in the Chinese society. If we analyze what were aims and objectives of cultural revolution of Mao, then we find out that the main aim of cultural revolution was the anxiety of Mao, because the people were deviating from his political ideas. He wanted that people should accept his philosophy completely. Accordingly, there was no denial that the masses were the source of all and authority in so far as political life was concerned. Mao's Cultural Revolution's basic aim was to change different patterns in society according to Mao's philosophy. And Mao clearly organized his forces, his revolutionary forces, and his policies for the attainment of basic objectives of the cultural revolutions. While examining about the objectives of the cultural revolution, Mao wants collective production through cooperative. So the cooperative should be encouraged. Feudalism, according to Mao, is the ally of imperialism and bureaucratic capitalism and the foundation of their rule. He highlighted peasants class and he considered them a most important class of the society. He suggested many reforms for agrarian era, or he suggested agrarian reforms in the state. He also introduced economic planning. So, while concluding Mao's views about cultural revolution, one can explain that Mao was able with the cultural revolution to breathe new life into the doctrines and establish for them a wider validity and he wants Chinese in a complete change patterns of life. Overall, while concluding topic of Mao Zedong, I can explain you that under the leadership of Mao Zedong, China became one of the leading industrial countries of the world. There was rapid industrialization, enormous increase in education, and great improvement in public health. China became atomic power and also become the member of the Security Council of United Nations. It played a vital role in progress, peace and prosperity of the world on the basis of friendship, especially with Pakistan. Above all these discussion about Mao Zedong, under the leadership of Mao Zedong, China introduced as a powerful country leading towards highest achievement of objectives of Mao in his period. And that is the end of this discussion.